Alright, hello everyone and welcome to game number 2 in our best of 3 semi-final between Pbhead and Gameslayer. Gameslayer taking game number 1 very simply and straightforwardly, getting the found that he liked, getting it second, providing him with an extra claim over his opponent, and just understanding the map very well, playing it out very nicely, and Pbhead dying to death. It was really that straightforward and simple. This game does not look quite as straightforward and simple. There are quite a lot of patches of iron, but there's clearly like this really good patch of iron and aluminum, but nobody wants it because it's out in the middle of all these hills. So let's see what our players have selected. Looks like Gameslayer, he was the first to found. He got his choice of location. He has taken 3 steel mills, almost the same time on the found, almost exactly the same. But Gameslayer took it just a little early, it looks like. At least I think Gameslayer took it early. Yeah, because he is the one with the debt, 10,000 in the debt. So he has 3 steel mills. Pbhead, on the other hand, he's got a triangle of steel. So that's a little bit better for him at the start of this game. But at HQ level 2, more importantly, he is going to have access to that extra claim, and he does not start the game with the 10,000 debt that Gameslayer has. That said, Gameslayer, it looks like, he elected for the more powerful water close to his base, instead of Pbhead's decision to go for the more powerful steel. So we'll have to see how that plays out this game. You can see Pbhead immediately going after the aluminum, the really strong aluminum on the map with the iron underneath it. Very understandable decision this game. Interesting to go for the high aluminum and then the low aluminum iron. I actually would have been tempted in his shoes, I'll admit, to take 2 combo tiles instead, just to get plenty of aluminum and iron coming in, because 2 aluminum can often flood the market very easily if it's a high and a low. Even just that 4.5 can be more than enough when your opponent is also collecting aluminum. So maybe having access to additional iron could have been beneficial. Not a huge deal though. Just something that's important to note is that's the decision that Pbhead made for the high and then the combo. Mutiny coming into Gameslayer's aluminum. Doesn't look like he can manage to do anything about that just yet. We will go ahead and switch over to what he has available. Yeah, just running. Look at the steel price. Look at what these people have done to it at this game. This is just insane. Steel is worth actually nothing right now. $5 steel. I think that's going to be a huge advantage over to Pbhead, who has taken away Gameslayer's access to aluminum. This ensures that Pbhead is going to be able to upgrade first. He's getting access to the glass first. Gameslayer has nothing. He's actually just running on empty right now. $4,500 to his name, as opposed to Pbhead. He's got $5,000 to his name, but significantly better aluminum production. So in just a moment, that's going to jump up very quickly. Pbhead also has his cash devoted to glass already. So this is going to make upgrading very simple and straightforward for him. He's going to be able to hit HQ level 2 very easily. Gameslayer, he's kind of having to sit back, rely on this farm to eventually pull in cash, which it might not be able to do very quickly, especially because Pbhead, he's already on 2 farms. It's just pretty much literally every single advantage so far in this game has gone over to Pbhead. He hits HQ level 3 first. Gameslayer's making progress. He is making progress. But that $50 aluminum price is being a serious hindrance right now. He has to pay $10,000 just for that aluminum. Now, I don't know why I can no longer see the total price of these buildings when I haven't done anything to change my options. Maybe the game just felt like being a jerk and being like, you don't see total prices anymore. Make sure you go back and fix that option. I don't know. It was a nice feature while it decided to allow itself to be turned on. So we don't know exactly what the price of Gameslayer's upgrade is going to be because I don't feel like doing that much math on stream. Math doesn't go well on stream. That said, we do know that it's going to be $7,000 worth of aluminum for him to pull it off. Pbhead, he's not really letting go of that aluminum anytime soon. Gameslayer has managed to get a hold of his mine once again. You can see that last little bit from Pbhead just heading on over toward his base. But that mutiny, that was quite painful for Gameslayer early in this game. Was not at all ready for it, and in fact did end up eventually transitioning into just 2 farms, instead of having the access to the water pump plus farm combination. Geothermal plot auction is a little bit odd here. Pbhead's already in a situation where he does need to start worrying about debt, but he's getting a hold of a geotherm, and he already has a geotherm coming online. So maybe even in this C level of debt, he's going to be okay this game, because he should start paying some of that back once this second geotherm comes online in particular. He's already making some fuel, but of course, this is the thing. These are kind of expensive in fuel, right? Like, look at this. This is $72 worth of fuel every second, estimated. $73 now. That's a lot of fuel, guys. That is a lot of fuel. I'm just saying, it's a lot of fuel. And all of that is kind of directly cutting into his profits because he is trying to make fuel. So every second when he's having to spend fuel on these freighters, it's fuel that he's just not getting to sell. It's problematic, to say the least. So these things say they're making him $110 a second. Realistically, probably together, they're making about maybe $90 to $100 a second. Just not the best of situations to be in. But still, Pbhead managed to get to HQ level 4, still sticking in that relatively safe B level of debt. He can stabilize on that pretty easily and keep a hold of this game, whereas Gameslayer is still stuck back on HQ level 3. He has gotten into some reactors himself this game, not having near so many things positioned far away from his base, so he is not paying a ridiculous fuel price on those. You can see very, very small chunk of his fuel going away to his freighters, but now he doesn't have any fuel because Pbhead has decreed it will be so. Unfortunate situation for Gameslayer, who is managing to get up a geotherm of his own. He will not be paying down debt the way that Pbhead is with his excess in power. However, Gameslayer will manage to secure a position where at least he is not taking on too much additional debt for the time being, especially with all of his reactors frozen out. One thing we never really looked at this game was the neutral colony, and it should have been looked at because this colony started off, I believe, with 4 laboratory modules and now has 5. And that means that it's consuming 1 chemical a second. Now, patents still aren't really coming into the 1v1 game very much. We haven't actually seen a seriously influential patent lab. We've seen some influential patents, but only when they've been auctioned off, realistically. So it's not like it's going to get in the way too much that these chemicals are expensive, but it does open up an additional opportunity. It's basically what these players need to be looked at to make money in the late game initially. Something like a hack array plus chem labs, even on HQ level 4 for Gameslayer, could potentially pull him back into this game without too much difficulty because carbon is not very expensive. All of these reactors have kept that fuel price down despite the amount that Pbhead has been trying to consume this game. Gameslayer still managing to knock that price down. You can see Pbhead with his 2 reactors isn't even keeping up consistent fuel production. Like, there. Drop down to minus 0.3 for a moment there with all those freighters online. And that's not really a serious issue with fuel at only $60, but it means these 2 buildings aren't really making a whole lot of money just at this moment. Gameslayer hits forward about the same time that Pbhead hits 5. Pbhead is going to move into an additional steel mill, steel at $90, makes perfectly good sense to me. And he is starting to try and move into those chem labs, likely secured this carbon earlier, just to try and make sure that he had plenty for this chem lab transition. That's about the only reason I can think of to have done that in a game where your opponent has such easy access to dry ice, and it's just a weird situation. Gameslayer also making his move into chem labs. No surprise there. This is exactly what we called, right? Nothing too big a deal there. Gameslayer was fortunate enough to intercept Pbhead's power surge. Power surge maybe a bit mispositioned, maybe a bit early, you never know. And so Gameslayer is going to turn that back onto Pbhead, freeze out his own chems, and that'll give Gameslayer, like, he's found one small edge this game that he can try and exploit to pull himself back into it. That said, it would still be a very long road for Gameslayer to come back into things. He would need to find a way to both expand before too long or put up an off-world market, depending on how good those are this game. Reasonably good, not super fantastic. Needs to find some way for growth and security at the same time, which is going to be very, very difficult to do, right? That's the whole point, is once you have a lead in this game, it's kind of hard for the other player to come back. That's just pretty consistent most of the time. You have to find some edge you can exploit that they don't have access to, and quite frankly, Gameslayer doesn't seem to be in a position where he's able to do that. Pbhead just has more water coming in. He's got a large number of tiles. The one big thing that I will point out is all this fuel consumption that Pbhead is doing, which is getting in his way. I mean, it's a lot of fuel consumption for Pbhead. Thing is, because of how geotherms played out this game, because Gameslayer wasn't able to secure 2 and Pbhead was, Pbhead doesn't have much debt anyway. So he can afford to be doing a lot of fuel consumption without it seriously hindering him. Whereas Gameslayer, he's in $100,000 worth of debt. He's pushing. He's starting to push toward that D range pretty heavily, and that is not a comfortable position to be in. Not at all. Not even just a little bit. So I don't know exactly what Gameslayer can do from here to get into it, as long as Pbhead plays this out carefully. Pbhead does go ahead and take an auction for a geotherm for about $8,000. He is going to put that building down. I don't know if I agree with that, quite frankly, because you might say, well, it's not a big deal, but it's 120 steel, right? That's 120 steel. Steel's worth $52. That's a lot of money to put down a geotherm still. We're talking like $6,000 for that geotherm. And that $6,000 that could have been committed to Gameslayer stock. It's 120 steel that could have gone to an Offworld market or a hacker array. There were options. There were. And I don't know if a geotherm was really what was going to make this happen for Pbhead, as opposed to any of these other options. That said, Gameslayer now in D levels of debt, trying to push to an Offworld market, which has been spotted by Pbhead. Chem Labs, no longer functional. Going to be trying to transition those, I imagine, into reactors. They are the obvious option, but unfortunately, while you're making this transition, you do not have money on hand to defend yourself. And Pbhead, he's chosen this moment to get aggressive. Gameslayer in the middle of a transition, in the middle of building an off-world market, in D levels of debt. It's the perfect time to strike. He cannot defend himself. Gameslayer needs to secure 3 stock to stay alive. Pbhead only needs 2 for the kill. He is going to allow Gameslayer to finish constructing this off-world market, but of course only under his oversight of the actual building. With that, I imagine we're either going to see a kill very, very shortly, or very simply a concession out of Gameslayer. He really has no edge left to exploit, no ability to defend himself in that D level of debt. It was a nice effort to try and make a move into the off-world market, certainly, especially with adrenaline boosts available this game. I don't fault him for going for it, but when you're that far behind, what are you going to do to actually survive? He is trying to push to the point where he can take this off-world market back with Mutiny. As you can see, he did. Pbhead, I would imagine, will be taking that back before too terribly long, if he can manage it. Thing is, Pbhead spent his off-world downtime, you know, on an adrenaline boost, it looks like, so he can't take it back right away. Still, though, only needing 1 more claim does Pbhead, which means about $1,000. Gameslayer is not going to secure enough money to survive, even managing to take his off-world market back, and he will be knocked out of game number 2. And we're on, once again, to game number 3 in this tournament. I don't know if there's, once again, too much more we need to discuss there. Gameslayer just unable to defend himself early. It was really that mutiny at the start that just killed Gameslayer. He just couldn't handle it. And so perhaps I would have to call that just a poor plan from Gameslayer. He had his choice of location. He had first to found, so he had best access to prices as long as he was quick. Not by much, by a little bit. And so perhaps his found just wasn't worth what he thought it was worth. Perhaps he just didn't understand the map very well. But in any case, Pbhead is going to be the one to go ahead and take this game because of that one mutiny back at right at the start of the game at HQ level 2.